Eventually, the pendulum swings.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and the lead fantasy analyst for Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me as always on Twitter at redrock_bball. Today we are looking at, it's an interesting thing, an ADP battle podcast is what I call it. Myself and another analyst who I'll introduce in a second, Alex Rikleen of RotoWire. We have a pick. I'm going to just make up random picks and say if these two players are available at this slot, who would you take and why? Me and Alex have some differing views on a lot of players, so that's why I'm bringing him on so we can talk about our different thoughts on these guys. Just quickly though, do encourage you, if you are watching this on YouTube, thank you to everyone who has subscribed to this channel. Over the weekend, we passed 10,000 subscribers. Absolutely amazing. In fact, in the last 12 months, the subscriber numbers have doubled, which has been huge. Hopefully in the next 12 months, we can double it again. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed. If you are watching this and you haven't subscribed, go and hit that subscribe button now. That would be excellent if you can do that. Also, follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball, as I mentioned, and over on Instagram, Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Tons of great polls and questions going up on the stories over there, so get involved. Add your thoughts over there as well. So, without further ado, I'll introduce my guest, Alex Rikleen. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so as I explained a bit earlier in the show, that we are going to be giving hypothetical draft picks here. So we've got a pick. Well, these are the picks we're going to do. Pick 1, pick 13, pick 18, pick 24. So start of the first round, the end of the first and second round, middle of the second, pick 24, the end of the second, 32, 47, 65, 80, and 100. Some random numbers in there. But Alex, out of so many fantasy basketball analysts out there, you seem to have quite different opinions to me. So I thought that's why it would be a good idea to get you on here and we can debate the merits of certain people at these positions. So let's start with the number 1 overall draft pick in a fantasy basketball draft. James Harden is available. Giannis Antetokounmpo is available. Who are you taking?
I'm going with Giannis here.
Okay, so what's your reasoning for taking Giannis ahead of these other guys who have established records as being number 1 players, whether that's Davis, whether that's Harden, whether that's Steph Curry? Why Giannis?
So there are 3 things really. With Harden, I'm a little concerned about what the Westbrook impact will be. With Anthony Davis, I'm concerned about how many missed games are there going to be and when are they, and the typical concerns with the ways in which he misses games and has to leave games early. And of the sort of 4 or 5 players who are widely being discussed at number 1, I think that Giannis sets me up the best in terms of flexibility for how I build the team with the rest of my draft. If you're picking at number 1, you got to wait a while until you go. And you don't want to buy too into a single strategy that early. And I think that Giannis will give me a little bit more flexibility than anyone else, except for Anthony Davis. But I'm not willing to take what I perceive as a bigger risk with Anthony Davis.
Yeah, look, I can understand this is, I guess, an entree into our debates because it is, as I said plenty of times, any one of those 5 guys that you pick at number 1, I don't think there's really any problem with it. Giannis, of course, had his issues with his free throw shooting and his 3-point shooting last season, but they did really strengthen over the final 30 or 40 games of the year, and if he can extend that out over the course of a full season, and then that boosts his value. And it's not like he hasn't done it before. He has shown an ability to be a high 70s free throw shooter over a course of a season, so that's something that can come there. Now, personally, I would take James Harden there. Now, I agree with you that Russell Westbrook is going to cut into his production, but Harden was just that much better than everybody else in fantasy basketball. The gap between him and the number 2 guy was astonishingly large. So even if he loses 10% of his production, he scores 5 or 6 fewer points per game and comes down from that 36 to 30 or 31. I still think he can be that number 1 guy and have that value there at that spot. It does There are issues, of course, with his field goal percentage. His field goal percentage is less likely to increase than Giannis's free throw percentage, so that's absolutely a concern there as well. But yeah, the number one pick, if you get the number one pick, feel happy about it because you're getting a good player. I'd take Harden in some of them. I've taken Towns at number one in another draft that I did as well. I can understand arguments for any of these guys. So this is a little bit of a palate cleanser, Alex, for our debates. The next one I don't think I'll have quite as much of agreement with you on, and that is if we're at pick number 13. Here are two players who are hypothetically available at this area, and I'm basing this off Yahoo ADPs. These guys could be around at this spot. At number 13, Kyrie Irving is probably going to be available. Kemba Walker is going to be available. Who are you going with?
So I'm going to go with Kemba here, and my reasoning is in part, I know, sort of a bugaboo of yours, but I am concerned about Kyrie Irving's health. I think his last fully healthy season was when he played, all 12 games in fourth grade. I am legitimately concerned about his ability to stay on the floor the whole season. Both of these players are probably going to have some load management games. But I'm also a little bit, realistically, I do expect Kyrie Irving to end the season with a higher per game Z-score than Kemba.
Yep.
But I think that it'll be, I expect it to be close. And one of the things that really appeals to me is this is going to be the best team Kemba Walker has ever played with by a lot. And I'm curious to see how that frees up his game and what that allows in terms of potentially improved field goal percentage, potentially some improved assists per game. And the way this Celtics team is built, I don't think it comes with any hit to his points per game or his threes per game. So I think that there's some room for improvement, even though Kyrie is always a top 15 finish and Kemba is usually in the 20s. I still think there's a lot of upside on Kemba, and I like his health outlook a little bit better.
The health outlook, I definitely agree with you. Like he played all 82 last year, 80 the year before, 79 the year before that, 81 the year before that. So we've had a 4-year record, and that's not to say that he couldn't trip over his dick and break his ankle tomorrow. Touch wood that happens. Anything can happen, but in terms of history, nagging injuries, there's nothing like that in Walker's history. But I do have to disagree with you on a couple of things. I think his assists are going to improve this season. You mentioned playing with better teammates. We're not relying upon Nick Batum being scared of taking a shot here. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. If Kemba finds those guys, they'll take that shot, they'll knock it down. Throwing it into Enes Kanter, we know how good he is down low. He can score. So I think his assists are going to go up. And he probably posts a career high in terms of assists. His efficiency could go up. We saw Kemba over the course of the early portion of his career when the Hornets had actually nobody and he was a sub 40% guy. Nick Batum arrived, who provided at least an additional option, and we saw 4 or 5 percentage point increase in his field goal. So that could happen again here. The thing that I don't agree with you with is that his overall production, his usage was at 32% last year, Alex. I cannot see any situation where he has a usage of that level. He also played 35 minutes a night, and on a team that is deeper, that is better, and the Celtics are looking to push to the playoffs, I think that we'll see that come down 34, maybe even 33 minutes a night. So taking that, maybe he loses 4 percentage points off his usage, maybe he loses 2 minutes per game, and he was the 19th ranked player last season per game in 8-cat value. I cannot see him improving on that based on those reasons, and I personally would take Kyrie because I think Kyrie is going to be able to put up similar numbers. Now, the health issue is a concern, but if I look at my projections on Basketball Monster and I use the replacement player thing for Kyrie, he still comes in as a top 12 guy because there are so many guys around there who could miss 10, 12, 15 games that it sort of puts them on an even setting. And I even think Kemba playing those additional maybe 10 games versus Kyrie would still put Kyrie ahead of him there. So that's our first, I guess, major disagreement in that. Is there anything you disagree with me there just in terms of my assessment of Kemba and say his usage and his minutes?
No, I think you make some good points, and frankly, in my analysis, I probably have underweighted the significance of a drop in minutes especially. I agree with you that the minutes are likely to go down and the usage are going to go down, and I probably should have paid more attention to that in my Kemba ranking. I think that once you get past the top 6, from 6 to 25, 30 is really a total minefield. And you want to come away with a guy that you're comfortable with. And so even if you completely had me 100% sold that Kyrie was a better pick than Kemba, if I'm just more in my gut comfortable with Kemba, I'm willing to go there and do that in this range, because I think that there are so many players where things could just fall off the rails. Joshy.
All right, so after fixing out these audio difficulties that we're having, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that I've got the old school headphones on. So, hey, let's move on to the next one now and look at our debate at pick number 18. Now, there are two guys who could be available here. Trae Young is available in many leagues at this particular spot in drafts, as is Mike Conley. Young's ADP is 21 over on Yahoo. Conley has an ADP of 42 on Yahoo, 35 on Fantrax, but I believe at pick 18, you would go with a different option to what I would. Why would you go with the play that you would go with?
Yeah, I have gone with Conley in the 18 to 20 range in a couple of mock drafts so far, which I know it's been a surprise to a lot of the people I've been in mocks with. So speaking specifically to Trae Young, one of the things I think that the fantasy community in general just does a terrible job of remembering is that development isn't linear. Yep. Last year at a very similar draft spot, we were picking Donovan Mitchell with confidence, and he had given us good reason to believe he could continue that. And by the end of last season, that was the value he produced. But there was a lengthy window at the beginning of the season where he was significantly underperforming from that. And so I'm always a little shy of young players who are being drafted near what I perceive as their ceiling. So I think it's very, very possible that Trae Young finishes with an 18 to 25 final rank, but it's also possible he does a lot worse than that. Mike Conley, it's similar to where I landed on Kemba Walker. I'm intrigued by him being in a better situation. He's got a long history of finishing in the top 35 or so. He's had a couple top 50 finishes in there. But I also think that there are, I think that the way the draft has worked out this year, people who production that I would have valued as the 35th pick in previous years, I'm stuck taking around pick 20 this year because there was so much player movement and there's just so much more uncertainty going in. And similar to Kemba in a new situation, I like his possibility to see some improved field goal percentage, maybe some improved assists, stuff like that.
I agree in terms of the improved field goal percentage for Conley. He actually, over the second half of last season, I think people look at his overall numbers last season where he's like just a bit under 44% from the field, but over his final 30 games, he shot 47% from the field. So he has had a history, and even the year before the 17-18 season when he was out in the 16-17 season, he shot 46% from the field. So he can get better in that range. The usage again is going to be my concern. 28% usage last season with Memphis, which was a career high. The 2 years before that, when he was on a better Memphis team, it was down at 26. This season, with Mitchell getting those shots, with Bojan Bogdanovic coming in a little bit more of a higher usage guy, also versus some of the players he played with in Memphis, like Kyle Anderson last season, that will take a little bit off him there. I think that he is absolutely rock solid as a third-round point guard. The ability to get assists and be a point guard, because that drops off pretty quickly later on, does boost his overall value as well. But I feel pretty good about taking Trae Young at this spot. You're right about the development being linear. Or not being linear, sorry, and we don't, looking at these guys, there is a risk with Young not being able to do this. But I go through and look at all these different things on this team, and it's not like when I project Trae Young out, I've gone, well, he's going to be a 48% shooter. He's going to knock in 42% of his threes. It's like, okay, I've made him get a little bit better in this shooting. I think he can be a 35-36% three-point shooter, 44% from the field. And take on extra minutes. And we've seen the Hawks really want to give him those extra minutes, and that's why I'm big on Trae Young at this spot. on a team where he and John Collins are going to have to carry this offense, whereas Conley maybe has to take a step back in terms of usage. He'll still be very good and he'll still put up numbers, but having a better teammate with him, to me, doesn't always mean your production goes up, whereas it can in certain areas, but that overall usage factor can be an issue, and that's why I would take Trae Young here. I'd take Trae Young probably earlier than this, to be honest, and like you said, if you wouldn't be surprised if he finished here, I wouldn't be surprised if he finished in the top 15 or even top 13 for this upcoming season, because of those minutes, because of the usage. And if he averaged 25 and 10, it's probably high end of the probability scale, but I don't think that it would be completely outrageous if he finished with a year of 25 points and 10 assists per game, which I'm happy with.
Wouldn't be shocking at all.
And as I said, this whole area of a draft, some of it's to do with the spread of talent in the NBA. There's messes all over the place in terms of who do I pick here. There's so much confusion, everyone being so closely packed in together. Another player, another selection we're looking at this range, pick number 24. It might seem like I've got a bit of an Atlanta Hawks fetish at this portion, but we're looking at John Collins or Pascal Siakam, who are likely available both at this spot. Collins has an ADP over on Yahoo at 31. Siakam has an ADP of 36, so we're talking about even going higher than their ADP. We're at the back end of the second round, which, as you referenced earlier, if you're picking at 1, this is your second pick here, and then you don't pick again until significantly later on, in the late 40s. So if you want one of these guys, you've got to have to make that move here. So pick 24, who are you going with?
I'm going with Siakam. I mean, John Collins is one of those players who I'm doing my pre-draft rankings, and I put myself in an isolation chamber for that. I don't even check the rankings that I did in April. I start from scratch in August.
That's how you have to do it, really.
And I was like, yeah, I'm high on John Collins, and then I check everyone else, and I'm actually low on him. And I was kind of bummed. I was excited to have John Collins on my teams, and it turns out I'm not going to get him anywhere, which I was disappointed by. So I totally see the excitement for him, but I think 24 is just a little high. I like Siakam. Siakam's career, I mean, he's been compared to Draymond Green before, but, Draymond had the same sort of finished in the 300s, finished in the 130s, and then, really took off. It had multiple top 25 seasons in a row after that. And what we saw from Siakam is kind of similar. Finished in 250, finished in 180. Now he finished 41st last year. And I think with a little bit more minutes, a little bit more offensive responsibility, we might see the 17 points per game go up a little bit. And he's the type of player, and he's got that type of motor where, when some players see their offensive responsibilities increase, their defense, their hustle kind of decreases. I just don't expect to see any of that from Siakam. I expect zero drop off in his steals, in his blocks, and his rebounds. So that's kind of why I've got him bumping up a bit.
It's interesting you mentioned that, the drop-off in steals and blocks with an increased focus on offense, because that's exactly what happened to Siakam last season. So I don't have him dropping off from what he did last year, but his numbers from that year 17-18 where he played 21 minutes a night, he went from 1.3 steals down to 1 steal per game, and from 0.9 blocks down to 0.7. Now that seems small, but in the scheme of things, dropping 0.2 blocks per 36 is a 20% decrease in your block numbers. From 1.3 steals down to 1 steal is a 20+% drop off as well. So that he did suffer those defensive drops already. I don't see him necessarily suffering another drop off this season. I think the scoring is going to go up from Siakam. I think he's pretty comfortably going to be a 20-point per game guy, but then the trade-off, Alex, is inefficiency, because his numbers, his true shooting went from 55 all the way up to 63 last season. That is a huge, huge jump up, but with an increase in usage, with an increase not only in usage, but in defenses going, well, the guy we have to stop now is Siakam. Like, he is who we have to stop. Will he be able to not only maintain that, or will he be able to improve it or maintain it? I think he actually loses out on value there. Collins averaged 20 and 10 last season and played 30 minutes a night. And also, I know everyone who's been listening to this podcast for the last month knows that I've beat this stat to absolute death. But But in the 2018 portion of last season, John Collins had 1 steal, like through the entire 3 months of that portion of the season, which is, you can say, well, he's terrible at steals, but nobody is that terrible at steals. So he won't continue to get 1 steal in 50 games of basketball. So his numbers there will go up. And I think that he is going to play an extra 4 minutes a game. Siakam might be playing an extra 2 or 3. And I would take Collins over Siakam. It's not a big difference to me. I don't think that it's a hugely egregious decision to go with Siakam over Collins, but that is the direction that I would go there. Do you have concerns? Go ahead.
Just to clarify, Siakam's blocks per 36 minutes dropped from 1.3 to 1.0, but his total his steals per 36 minutes drops, but his total steals did increase.
But that's because
from 17-18. Just to make sure that people are clear on what you were saying.
That's because he played an extra 900 minutes last season, so he got an
a lot more minutes.
He got an extra 12 steals in 900 minutes. So his overall block rate and his steals and block totals increased, but the block rate and steal rate decreased because
absolutely
his usage jumped up by about 5 percentage points, and that efficiency jumped up as he became more of an offensive guy versus a defensive player. The next one we have a look at here, Alex, at pick number 32. Now, in general, for these first ones, I've gone with similar positions outside of the Harden and Yanni comp at number 1. At pick 32, I just looked at one of the guys on your rankings who really stood out to me like dog's ball. So let's put these two guys together. At number 32, De'Aaron Fox is available. Brook Lopez is available. Who are you picking?
So I have Brook Lopez ranked considerably above De'Aaron Fox.
Yes, you do.
Since I sent you my ranks over the last couple of weeks, I've realized that I just don't need to take Brook Lopez at 32, which is where I definitely took him in several mock drafts. But he's falling far enough that I can get him with a later pick. So strategically, I would no longer take Brook Lopez just because that's not what the value is. But in a vacuum, I would absolutely take Brook Lopez over De'Aaron Fox. Which makes this still an interesting thing worth talking about. I think that Malcolm Brogdon leaving helps Brook Lopez. I think it increases Brook Lopez's usage.
Agreed.
I think it will increase the number of threes that Brook Lopez is taking. He is a pretty efficient shooter. And he finished last year 31st overall in 9-cat rank. I mean, if we expect things to increase a little bit, and that's where he finished. I actually have him ranked below where he finished last year, despite the fact that I think his numbers might improve a little bit.
Now, everyone who listens to this podcast again knows that I pay zero attention to turnovers when I'm looking at player value, and Lopez's value is boosted by turnovers. But I'll give you this. Now, he played 29 minutes a game last season when his backup center was DJ Wilson and Ersan Ilyasova. His brother comes in to be the backup center, a far more stout backup center who played big minutes for the Bulls last season, can hold his own defensively. Lopez, of course, like all of us, Alex, is 1 year older than this time last season. So I think that those 29 minutes, and he played 30 minutes a night down the stretch as well, I think that the Bucks, who theoretically have one less contender going at them in the Eastern Conference, with the Raptors potentially dropping off, don't know how the Celtics are going to fare without Kyrie and Horford as well, that they might be able to take it a little bit more easy to preserve Lopez with another Lopez coming in behind him, that those 29 minutes a game, and Budenholzer has absolutely no problem with just cutting the shit out of people's minutes, saying, well, you're not playing because we don't need you to play. So those 29 minutes, I think it's more realistic to think that he plays 27 minutes versus him going to 30 minutes a night.
Sure. Everything you're saying about his workload is reasonable. I just think that he is a significantly better player than his brother.
Of course, yeah.
He's a much, much better shooter. So he enables a much different kind of offense than his brother. And I think that overall, while, the Raptors are no longer really a contender, I do think that there are more tough games in the Eastern Conference this year than last year.
Okay, that's interesting. Back to Fox for a second. Now, he played only 30... This is where I look at it, guys. He played 31 minutes a night. He's heading into his third season. We know that there are going to be players who were in the Team USA experience over the summer who are going to take leaps forward. I think that we see more minutes from Fox. He took a huge leap forward. Now, I'm not expecting him to all of a sudden have that efficiency go even higher than where it was last year. I just think that by getting an extra 2-3 minutes per night onto what he did and him becoming the leader. Now, I've heard talk to Kings people who think he's going to be the leading scorer on this team, taking over from Buddy Hield as well. And again, do you price in the fact of that getting point guards and getting assists is a lot harder later in the draft than what it is for getting big men?
No, but most of the time I already have a point guard at this point in the draft.
Yep.
I mean, it is still early, but I think that by pick 32, you really have that. And even if I'm giving him a strategic boost for being a point guard and for providing a good number of assists, I mean, he finished last season 70th overall. His rank after the All-Star break was pretty much the same as his rank before the All-Star break. So having him jump from 70th to 32nd, that's a bit of a leap. And, I'm fine with projecting him to improve, but to me that just feels like a little bit of wishful thinking.
What I've got him doing here is like over the post All-Star break, he was averaging almost 9 assists per 36. So I've got him at that similar level, almost 20 points per 36. I think that'll go up just by nature of him playing more minutes than what he did last season without any real big spikes in efficiency. Look, I could be wrong on this with Fox. I am pretty keen on him in that 3rd to 4th round range for this upcoming season. Let's move on to the next one as we move further into the draft. Alex, pick number 47. DeAngelo Russell is available in most situations. Kelly Oubre is available in every situation. Which guy are you going for at this spot?
I'm going with Oubre. I don't really want DeAngelo Russell. And part of the reason I don't want DeAngelo Russell is because what happens if he's traded in December or January and he ends up in a much worse situation than he's already in? There is
you think he's in a bad situation now? Do you think he's in a bad situation now?
Yeah, that's fair. There's so many risky picks early that and I guess it's silly to say there are risky picks early and then to say that I'd take Oubre over him, but there's so many risky situations around. DeAngelo Russell is up there with Nick Vucevic as like one of the 2 or 3 people most likely to get traded this year, I would argue. And so that alone has me a little bit concerned about him. And Oubre, it could be foolish, but I am buying into the Suns cleaning out what had been a really big logjam at their small forward position.
Yep.
I'm buying into how much he was able to increase his production and be successful after the All-Star break playing for the Suns. The Suns can often do things that don't make sense. And the Suns are pretty heavily invested in Bridges behind him on the depth chart. So there are definitely risky elements to Oubre's game, but I think he's going to have a ton of minutes, and I believe the 20 points and 6 rebounds that he was averaging after the All-Star break.
Do you believe in those even with Devin Booker playing, because he wasn't playing in that post-All-Star break period? The addition, we can talk about TJ Warren leaving and Josh Jackson leaving, and that's all real, but they did also add Dario Saric to take all those power forward minutes that Oubre was getting next to McCall Bridges last season, so he's going to get a big chunk there. And of course, the Suns are playing DeAndre Ayton, a power forward now, allegedly, so that does take a little bit away there. I'm not as convinced that Oubre or the Suns are that committed to Oubre. The contract they gave him is quite short-term and not that big money. So I think they still believe that Bridges is going to be that guy, whether it's this season or next season. They like what Oubre brought, but they're not fully committed to him as a massive, massive piece of this core. Now look at those post-All-Star break numbers, and they were great. 21 points, 6 boards, 2 steals, a block, like amazing numbers. Efficiency, something of which he'd never even sniffed at before, and that was fantastic. But Booker, more minutes for Ayton, more touches, a different coach, a development from Bridges, an addition of Saric. I feel very unconfident that he gets to those numbers, whereas Russell, he played only... Again, I really look at guys and go, well, he played 30 minutes a night. Is he going to play more this year? And I can't see any situation why he wouldn't, unless the Warriors are so keen on developing Jacob Evans in that role. Like, he's going to have to play. I cannot... Can you see any situation where Russell plays 30 minutes a night for the Warriors?
Russell?
Yeah.
I think he will, but I don't. The Warriors are up there in the rotations that I don't totally understand right now.
But the guys off the bench behind him it's Jacob Evans and it's Jordan Poole. Like he played only 30.
You think you were saying more than 30?
Yeah. Like,
Sorry,
is there any situation he plays less than 30? I cannot see it.
Oh no. Yeah, of course he's playing at least 30.
He played 30 in a game last year. I think he's at 33, 34 because, again, Jordan Poole and Jacob Evans, they are the backup guards on this Warriors depth chart, and they are bad.
I love Jordan Poole.
Hey, you can love him as much as you want.
I'm a Michigan fan. I love Jordan Poole.
You can love him as much as you want. He's not good at this point. He's not good. So Russell is going to see more of those minutes. I just have that worry with Oubre that he feasted in a time that is not representative of how the Suns are going to look necessarily this season. But hey, if you want him to pick 47, I can guarantee you he's going to be available for you to pick.
He will be there.
At pick 47.
One final thing on Oubre and all of the Suns is I am kind of bought in on the idea that Ricky Rubio will actually raise the value of
I can say that
whatever other Suns are getting minutes. So I boosted Booker. I've never had Booker as high as I have him this year. I think I have DeAndre Ayton at 18th or 19th. I've got all of my Suns boosted up the ranks because I think that playing next to Ricky Rubio adds a lot of value. And so that is a part of why I have Oubre that high.
Yeah, look,
if his minutes stay elevated, that's a part of it.
I think he's getting over 30, and him and Bridges are going to take all of those minutes at the threes and playing at the two. I worry about them trying to shoehorn Frank Kaminsky in as a power forward or DeAndre Ayton there, because ideally running small ball and pushing Oubre and Bridges together there alongside Booker and Rubio would be something I really want to see once Saric is off the floor. But what Monty Williams wants to do there remains to be seen. Let's move it along a couple more rounds or another round. At pick 65, Terry Rozier is going to be available in a lot of situations. Victor Oladipo, he's going to be available at this spot. Now, I have mentioned plenty of times on this podcast before, I feel very uncomfortable with taking Oladipo at the range where he, basically on a per-game basis, this is a round where he ranked last season anyway. Plus, we don't know if he's going to even be back in the 2019 portion of the season, probably December return, maybe it's January. We don't know how he's going to look. So why would you take, and I'm spoiling this, why would you take Victor Oladipo here at pick 65?
I think that we've reached the point where the value of him, especially if he comes back a little early, which I just don't. I tend not to trust that we know when players are going to come back.
Yep.
If he comes back mid-December, and I've got 4 months of Oladipo as a top 40 or better producer, I think that there's just so much value there that I'm willing to do that over a range of the draft where there aren't a ton of people that I'm all that excited about.
Are you worried about the fact that we don't actually know how people tend to return from this injury? It's not an NBA injury of anyone in their prime who's had to deal with. Tony Parker had it when he was like 36 and he then retired 1 year later. So we don't know how he's going to return. The fact that when he does return, he would almost definitely be on some sort of maintenance program for the first 2-3 weeks, maybe it's 4 weeks, where he's playing, sitting 1 game a week, he's playing 27 minutes a night for a couple of weeks and ramping himself up. And the fact that last year, before this quad injury actually happened, he was dealing with knee problems that saw him be not anywhere near as good as he was the year before. Defensive numbers fell right off, the shooting wasn't there. They're all the concerns to me with Oladipo. Plus, if he misses the first 3 months of the season, then of course I'm losing 3 months worth of production there as well. So do you not have concern about that? Even if he comes back, say, 15th of December, when are we getting full load from Oladipo?
So I think we should acknowledge that I'm assuming that we're talking about a daily lineups league. Yep. In a weekly lineups league, I definitely drop him down a bit. I'm assuming that this is a league where I can have him on the IR until he comes back. Yep. Which, granted, that's taking up the IR other players will be injured for short term and I won't be able to use the spot on them because I'm using it on Oladipo. But I'm making those assumptions in this, 65th rank. But to I think what might be the most important question of what you said, I'm not that worried about about the rareness of this injury, just because I tend not to trust the information that is made available about player health. And the only thing that we know for certain is that the medical technology, especially the medical technology that players have access to, does typically improve quickly over time. So, it could be, everything you're saying about why this injury in particular scares you is totally legitimate, but I'm just not really factoring that in because I just don't believe that we know enough to act on that knowledge.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Now, why, Alex, do you hate Terry Rozier more than me?
I mean, I just prefer players who make more shots out of 100 than I would.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I'm a pretty bad shooter. I mean, I was in a draft where someone joked, enjoy his 25% field goal percentage after he was drafted, but that's kind of on the table. I legitimately believe that the Charlotte Hornets squad could challenge for the record in fewest wins.
Oh yeah, they're gross.
I mean, this is one of the worst rosters I've ever seen, and he's going to have. This is a guy who's never shot 40% from the field, and is now going to be the focal point of the offense. I don't want someone who is going to absolutely be a terrible, terrible drain on a category that can be hard to sustain and hard to build strength in. I don't want that until we're talking about pick 90, pick 100. I don't believe that he does enough. He's not a great passer. He's an okay rebounder. Yeah. He's an okay rebounder, but he's small. There's a lot of negatives going on.
Yeah, look, he's going to bludgeon himself into points, but it's going to take him more shots than actual points to get there. And there are huge negatives with Rozier. People who listen to this podcast know, I've espoused those negatives for years and years and years. But the Hornets apparently ignored my advice and paid him way too much money. But let's move on towards the back end of the draft now. Pick number 80, Derrick White, Maximum Derrick. He is available.
Maximum Derrick.
And Paul Millsap is also there. Alex, this one's controversial to me. You are taking Paul Millsap at pick number 80. Explain why Millsap, with the addition of Jeremy Grant, and again, 1 year older, is putting in one of his best seasons in recent memory.
So, the Millsap signing, the Grant signing, legitimately terrifies me, and that is a huge issue. But I just feel like the draft really falls off a cliff at pick 80. And so once you get there, once we're at this cliff, I'm looking around and I'm saying, okay, I'm trying to say, what's the best case scenario for these players? And I'm deliberately trying to paint a rosy picture. Yep. And when I look at Millsap, the rosy picture is, 12 to 15 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists. 2 assists from a big man this late, that's pretty good. I just think that the rosy picture, if things work out, is pretty good, and everyone past pick 80 is at risk of ending up on the waiver wire. And when I paint the rosy picture that I paint for Derrick White, I just still don't think it's all that attractive to look at. His per 36 numbers just really don't impress me. 14 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.4 steals and 1.0 blocks is good. He has that potential to be a 1-1-1 guy if he gets enough minutes, but now he's dealing with Murray coming back, who might cut into his minutes. To me, the upside for Derrick White is a lot lower than the upside for Millsap, even if White's more likely to hit on that.
I don't even have Millsap in my top 140. The Nuggets people that I've spoken to expect his minutes to go down. He only played 27 a night. They're thinking 25 a night with more days off than he's had in the past, which is legitimately terrifying to me. And you talked about White's defensive numbers. Well, Millsap averaged per 36 last year 1.6 blocks and 1.0 blocks. 1.6 steals, and 1.0 blocks, which is almost the same as Derrick White did as a point guard. So those numbers, like out of position, is crazily high to me to get those sort of defensive numbers out of Derrick White. The same as Paul Millsap, who in the past has put up huge defensive numbers, but he hasn't been that guy in 4 years or so. And the reduction in minutes, from what I've heard from Nuggets people, is something that'll keep him out of. And again, top 140. Theoretically puts him as a standard league guy because you roster 156 guys, but I just even if it's pick 140 and Millsap's there, I'd probably pass just to take a flyer on someone else because I just don't see his upside. Now, you said you believe in his upside. I don't see him saying, all of a sudden we're going to play him 30 minutes tonight. I see zero chance of that actually happening for Millsap.
But
this season.
Are you not worried about White's minutes? With Murray?
A little bit, but I have faith in White being a good player. I have faith in him being a better player than DeJounte Murray, and the Spurs believing in him and them running him 28 to 30 minutes a night. The fact that he made Team USA basically because Greg Popovich said, no, I want him there because that's how I believe in him. That gives me that confidence of him being there so Popovich could work with him and Pop saying he is on the team because he is the guy that I want to be there. That gives me that level of confidence. Murray, we see guys coming back from ACLs who struggle. They're on the court, but they struggle a bit with their efficiency. Murray can run, I guess, a bit off the ball as well. He's not a good. We talk about Terry Rozier not being a good passer. Murray's in a similar boat to that. I think the guys who are going to suffer are going to be Bellinelli, Bryn Forbes are going to lose playing time there, and Derrick White will get his fair share for the Spurs. I'm not all that worried. I think that, look, in the best case scenario, White could be a top 50 guy. I think that's pretty limited because I just don't see him playing 33 a night. He's just not getting to that level. But at the back end, 28, 29, I feel pretty good about him getting to that area. Last one, Alex. Pick number 100. We're looking at a battle of former Chicago Bulls point guards and current Chicago Bulls point guards. Tomas Satoransky is available. Derrick Rose is available. Everybody knows which one I'm picking, so who are you picking?
Yeah, I'm going with Derrick Rose, and it's just, to me, both of these players are guys who might be the starting point guard and might hold the starting point guard job, but also might not. And when I look at the two and I think about who else the Pistons have available who could take away the job from Derrick Rose, I said starting point guard. I just mean point guard who plays the most minutes, point guards who plays in crunch time. I don't care if Derrick Rose is actually on the court when the game begins. I think Kobe White is a much bigger threat to Satoransky than anyone on the Pistons is to Derrick Rose. And I'm intrigued by the possibility that Derrick Rose has entered a new stage of his career as that, the veteran who understands his role and knows that he's never going to return to superstar status, but can be a quality scorer, decent passer, and really help a team that has playoff aspirations.
The Bulls have playoff aspirations as well, so that's why I think they are going to lock in on Satoransky as the starter. Kobe White is not ready at all to be a starter. They want to develop this core, but they want that 8th seed, the Bulls. So Satoransky, to me, they wouldn't have paid him $10 million over the next 2 years. The third year is non-guaranteed, but $20 million over the next 2. They wouldn't have paid him that $10 million if they didn't want him to be a bridge, to be a starter, to get them back into the playoffs for White to take over in 2 years' time. Chris Dunn is finished. I don't think we need to worry about him in Chicago at all. Rose.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Dunn either.
Yeah, nobody should be worried about. Hey, maybe he surprises everybody, but it would be a surprise even to himself, I guess, at this point. But I think what we look, and this is what I look at with Rose. He finished last season around that top 100-ish type mark, but also it came on the back of 37% three-point shooting, which, Alex, as you're well aware, he shot 6% from three over his final 18 games. And that 37 is the highest number he's posted from three ever, and was on the back of some really just bullshit shooting at the beginning of the season, which has no chance of repeating.
I hear you. I hear you, but the point about, I don't have a good refutation to your point on Rose. I do have a good refutation to your point on Satoransky, though, which is neither you nor I believe in the Bulls coaching staff.
That's true. Yes.
as be able to do anything positive. And a trap that fantasy managers fall into all the time is, the contract trap. Yep. The GMs give out the contract, the GMs don't assign the minutes. And if the Bulls coaching staff, which you and I both think is kind of incompetent in the first place, ends up deciding that Satoransky needs to be benched in favor of Kobe White, they're not, consulting with their accountant before making that decision.
The counter to your counter I put there is that part of the reason that Jim Boylan is the head coach is because he does enjoy licking the old boots of Garpak, so that's why he is in there, because he does what they say. So I think that is a large part of how he got the job, how he got the extension as well. And we could be wrong on that, because you're right. Yeah. There's no guarantee that the contract means the role there, but that is going to be an interesting one for me. I think that still, again, Satoransky probably has higher upside. He's had top 60 stretches when Wall's been injured in the past, probably on a more or less talented team, just with Beal and really no one else in that Wizards team at those stages. But he is the guy that I would take with that selection. Alex, that'll wrap it up for our battle across ADPs here. Give everyone, first of all, your Twitter handle, and give us a plug of what else you're doing.
My Twitter is Rikleen, my last name, Rikleen. And I'm just putting up some articles, doing the preseason workload over at RotoWire.
So go and check out Alex over on Twitter. Check out his stuff at RotoWire. And Alex, thank you for making your debut on the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun. Good to air out some of our disagreements.
Yeah. The airing of grievances has gone alive. Guys, that will do it for today's podcast. If you are watching this on YouTube, in the comments below, let me know which guy you would have picked at every situation that I did put up there. Do you believe, or do you agree with me? Do you agree with Alex in those situations? And as I mentioned earlier, thank you to everyone who subscribed on YouTube. 10,000 subs. It's been fantastic. Now I've just got to get the 20,000 Twitter followers. Not far away from that one as well. So follow me at redrock_Beeble. And over on Instagram, check out our stories. Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Subscribe, 5-star ratings, reviews, thumbs up, sharing, all that great stuff. The NBA season is 1 month away. Fantasy basketball is kicking into high gear, and this is the place to get all your info. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Jordan Clarkson.